Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday, June 20th, 2023 Town of Cumberland Planning Board meeting. And I'll call things to order. And Josh, yes?
The camera operator, now you're on, okay?
Okay, I'll do it again for all the four people that are watching us at home. Again, would like to welcome everybody to the June 20th Planning Board meeting, and I'll call things to order. Josh is not with us tonight, but all other 6 members are present. So right now, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the May 16th meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
It's seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
One abstention, Peter, because I wasn't there.
Okay, so we've got 5 and 1 abstention. All right, we have no staff plan approvals. We've got a minor change approval, the Grange Hall Pub at Longwoods Preserve located at Wander Way, AKA by the power line, formerly 76 Longwood Road, tax assessor map R03, lot 13, for de minimis lighting plan changes. Carla?
Yes, the owner of the pub asked if he could get a minor change approval.
Can you get closer to the?
Sorry. It happens every meeting. I have to be reminded. The owner wanted to change the type of lighting fixtures to better fit the character of the pub and kind of the agricultural thing. So it doesn't affect the lighting levels, the lighting placement. It was just an architectural change. So I approve that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the first hearing and presentation, and this is a public hearing for a sketch plan review, a 72-unit major subdivision to be located at 77 Blackstrap Road, tax assessor map R07, lot 53 in the industrial zoning district, and the West Cumberland Housing Overlay Zone. The applicant owner is David Chase, BR Property, LLC, and the representative is Peter Beagle from Land Design Solutions. So, Carla, do you want to lead us with this?
Sure. This is a project for a parcel, an area in West Cumberland known as the former Pike Pit, gravel pit. And David Chase owns it, has owned it for a number of years now, and is interested in doing a housing project that would have affordable homes, some of the units being affordable, not 100% of them. And the zoning for that area allows the project to be designed with the density that is being proposed. So this is what in conformance with the zoning. Sometimes in the past, the town has looked at projects and there's been a need for a zone change to allow a certain project to happen, or a contract zone. Neither is the case with this. This is a project that's in conformance with the, it's called the West Cumberland Affordable Housing Overlay. And with that, I'll let the applicant's representative describe it a little more fully.
Good evening. My name's Peter Beagle. I'm with Land Design Solutions, located here in Cumberland. I'm here tonight with David Chase, the applicant and owner. Not with us tonight, but who's been folks that have been working with us is CV and Mahar Engineers. As Carla mentioned, this is the old Pike Pit. It is bordered by Blackstrap Road. I'm going to run my cursor along the lines here. Blackstrap Road along here, Upper Methodist Road down along this side, and the main turnpike along this side. David purchased the pit in 2009 from Pike Industries. There was a land swap down along these two sides here with the Turnpike Authority in 2011. For the tail end of the Pike years, and then for David's operating years, it's been operated primarily as a material processing facility with bring loam in and screening it, blending materials, crushing stone, that sort of thing. The parcels, and I'm going to bring up my next, well, the parcel's approximately 40.9 acres. As Carlos said, it's located in the industrial zone, and it's also located in the West Cumberland Housing Overlay District. There is no public sewer, and there is no public water, but that is currently in the process of being brought across the highway and will service the site. Let me get to my next. So here's the plan of the proposed sketch plan. We have the net residential density calculation table up top here, and that is per the town ordinance, where we subtract the steep slopes, proposed roadways, wetlands, those sorts of things, and we come up with the allowable number of units. Per that calculation, we're allowed 73 units on that parcel. Because there is no on-site septic, and we need to do private septic systems, there's also a calculation that you need to adhere to through the state of Maine, the Department of DHS and DEP. That calculation is shown on this little table right here, and that has to do with the number of assigned gallons per day, how many bedrooms are in the houses, assigned gallons per day, and you need 20,000 square feet of area per X number of gallons. So we need to meet, go through both those calculations to get a determination of what's, what is going to fit there. The proposed development is a single-family residential condominium-style development. So it's all one parcel. You own your house. There's limited common area around you for your yard, and then there's association area and open space. So it's done in that regard. That gives us setbacks from the perimeter, which would be along the Turnpike land, Upper Methodist Road, around the cemetery, around Blackstrap Road, and then there is a private single-family residence right up in this corner. So that's the outer boundary for the site. A 50-foot buffer is required between our proposed residential property and all non-residential abutting parcels. So we have a 50-foot setback along the Turnpike, 50-foot setback around the cemetery, and then just the zone required setbacks along Upper Methodist and Blackstrap Road and along the around the private residence. This plan shows 72 housing units. 50% of those homes would be affordable and 50% would be market rate. We're showing a mix of house styles for both, so that everything's not the same, that there's a mix of different opportunities for folks. The subdivision road would connect Blackstrap with Upper Methodist. It would be designed and constructed as to the residential collector standards for greater than 50 trips per day, meeting that Cumberland standard. That gives you a 50-foot right-of-way, a 22-foot pavement width, shoulders, and sidewalk on one side. As I said before, public water would service this development, and private sewer. This proposed sketch also shows 4 units along Upper Methodist in an area that we thought that would be feasible and provide a little different, slightly different housing opportunity for some. We have been working with Stephen Mahar, hydrogeologist, on monitoring level of groundwater, direction of flow, making sure that septic systems are feasible and would be able to serve this site. And we've gotten pretty far with that, or far enough that makes us feel comfortable being here tonight, that's a very feasible situation. 10% of the site is required as open space, so that'd be 4.9 acres. We're actually proposing 26.9 acres. As you can, all that kind of light greenish yellow area would be open space. So we're proposing pond, some sort of trail system, some play areas. So there's with this type of development, there really is quite a bit of opportunity for open space. The applicant is planning on constructing those homes himself, so that's not something where that would be they would be sold and farmed out to somebody else. He's planning on constructing those himself. The affordability factor, the affordability is based on the developer offering 50% of the units to qualified buyer. Qualified means a person or household with a gross income not exceeding 120% maximum of the greater Portland area median income, referred to in the, I think the town document as AMI. The town would verify people's income. It's not just the developer with his own private negotiations. The town's would be very involved in making sure that qualified buyers are approved. The affordable units would not be for rent. They'd have to be owner-occupied. There's always the question of, okay, well, somebody buys their affordable unit and they expand it and they do certain things, and all of a sudden it's, not affordable. And we think through deed restrictions and being a condominium-style development, we can limit the building window to make sure that the footprint can't grow. So we believe we have good methods of controlling that and keeping the affordable units affordable. Still working with the town on refining that agreement, some of the finer points, but I think we're in pretty good shape and a pretty good understanding with the town staff on that. This project, as you know, would have to go through the town of Cumberland subdivision permit review. Would also need a Maine DEP Site Location of Development Act permit, which is the long and lengthy permit covering septic systems, the whole host of everything. So that's 6+ months usually when you submit that by the time you get that back. So this would be a lengthy process. But that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Beagle. So questions from the board? Ann?
Yeah. Let me see, what is an affordable price currently? What do you estimate in the town of Cumberland? What would that price be? Just a
Can I
guesstimate.
defer to you? Yeah.
The price obviously changes on, depending on the interest rate, which is kind of a wild card right now. But right now, my estimation is it's approximately $425,000.
Okay. Well,
That's what
okay.
Bill said.
And how about, where would a qualified buyer come in, income-wise?
I haven't got the final number on what the average medium income is in the greater Portland area, and it's not a number I come up with. It's a number that the government comes up with, but it's approximately around 110,000 is the average medium income
Okay, and
per
120
household.
per household.
Per household.
By the way, the speaker is David Chase, who is the owner, just for everybody at home.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, thank you. Now,
Question?
Carla, I was also wondering if you were going to walk us through, well, I was very interested in the agreement between the town and the builder that is included in this package. Let me see, what do they call it there? It's the Town of Cumberland Affordable Housing Agreement and Declaration of Covenants, Conditions, Restrictions, and Options to Purchase. That is included in this package.
Okay.
Who wrote that? Oh, thank you.
That was been a work in progress and still is a work in progress, but it was between the town manager and the town attorney. It's not a document I produced.
Okay,
It's
that's,
it's still a thing in progress, Ann.
okay. So, and this would be like a blueprint for going forward, this type of agreement.
What that type of agreement does is it sets out the parameters for affordability.
Yes.
And Bill Shane was to be here this evening to speak to this. He's much more versed in the numbers than Dave and I are. But by the time this gets to the next stage for planning board review, obviously this is sketch plan, it's to talk about
right.
the general layout and so forth. By the time this comes back for a preliminary plan review, which I don't know if you gentlemen have a time frame in mind for that.
I'm hoping that we're back August to September meeting for preliminary, and at that time, we will have completed the documents ready for submission to the DEP.
Okay.
Okay.
Question, Peter?
Paul, and then,
So the covenants were very detailed and interesting, and I'm sure they'll be edited and modified eventually. There was a 30-year limit, I think, on the covenants had to be in effect, which was interesting. My question is, have you done any preliminary marketing on maybe you've had a development like this where there's affordable and market housing together? Have you ever done that before? And have you done any pre-marketing to see what? And the reason I ask is because in our package there was a stipulation that the town could try to sell for the affordable. After 365 days, you could take it over, and then it would be a market unit. And I'm just curious if there was very little interest, that it could definitely affect and make everything market priced. So I'm just curious if you've looked at any development like this.
Personally, I have not. I've done several developments. I recently just about finishing one up behind Harmon's Hamburgers in Falmouth, which is 68 units. There were no affordable houses in there, and the so marketing wise, I'm 61 years old. I've done it for 40 years. The market has changed 6 or 7 times, and I'll be talking to you today, finishing this project in 5 years. So I don't want to bury myself in details like I'm the end all, know all, but I have a very good sense of what the real estate market is today and what is available in the town of Cumberland, Falmouth. Did walk through some houses in Westbrook that'll be damn near identical to these houses, and they're selling for $480. I think I'm going to be 10. I think knowingly going in, I'm leaving 10% on the table, but I don't really care.
So
to
your
tell you the
sense
truth.
is positive.
Yeah. I think I've got some wiggle room. I'm very comfortable.
And then the other question I have is, I'm familiar with, I think, your development on Hemlock and Raymond.
No,
That's not,
that's a different, that was John Chase. Unfortunately, he
all right.
passed away.
Because that's kind of dragged
No
on,
relation.
I'd say, for 6, 7 years, and
Yeah.
our standard condition of approval, the timing of all of that could be an issue. So,
Right.
yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in public comments.
Bridget?
Yeah, I guess Carla, this is for you. Does cluster subdivision standard, do those apply at all, or the overlay is totally what we are looking at?
That's a very good question. I think that we would classify this as a cluster-style subdivision because of the preservation of open space, and the overlay will govern whatever the overlay covers, and anything not covered in the overlay defaults down to the underlying zone.
So it's not like the stricter version wins? It's the,
It is not.
Okay.
It is, the
Okay.
purpose of the overlay is to layer on top of existing zoning standards that are desirable from the town's perspective at the time the ordinance was adopted by the council.
okay.
Anything else? Anybody? So first of all, could you kind of, for the folks that are here, kind of go over where you intend to buffer and why?
Well, we're trying to basically create a very nice place for people to live, and part of the shaping of this is going to be a little more evident with the next preliminary plans when you can see the grading. Obviously, it's a gravel pit, so the middle part is a lot lower than the rim around it. And I think based on those grades and what we try to do, pond-wise and play area-wise, we obviously would like to be buffering the people, the homes that we're building from the highway. And then we have a bit of a vegetated buffer along Blackstrap Road and along Upper Methodist Road. So I think it's getting a look and getting a feel for what's existing and what's going to be able to remain there when earth moving is done. And protect, obviously, we would like to protect as much as possible the existing residential home up in that corner.
So I guess that would be my question, is that as far as any residential homes that are around there, I'm assuming you're going to have some kind of a buffering plan for those folks?
We'll have a whole landscape plan that will include buffering, it'll include street tree planting, it'll include, the whole ball of wax, really, to make this a good place for the folks that would live in here, and a decent neighbor for the folks that surround us.
Can you talk a little bit about the traffic pattern and why, how you came to design it the way you did?
Well, it always seems to make sense to connect to more than one place. As I said, we're down low here. If you drive in that pit, there's a pretty good grade and quite a few feet that drop off that get down to here, to this. So it seems only logical that you would want to have more than one way in and out, especially with that number of homes. Because I have yet to work on a project where the fire department was not, emergency response, was not desiring more than one way into a housing development. I think it's if you drive down here, it's a longer, slower drive out Upper Methodist Road, so I would anticipate most people in this development would come up here to Blackstrap Road. I can't tell you at this time how many people would turn left or right, or, we have done no traffic study to figure out, to crunch those numbers.
So at the next stage, we get the traffic study, and for people that are concerned about the traffic, there'll be some numbers and details as to what the number of vehicles coming off Blackstrap, and but one would agree that with this size of development, just for safety purposes, that you'd want two entrances, so that makes sense. The next question is, I know there's been a lot of discussion about modern septic systems, so what may be your grandfather's or your father's septic system yesterday, and now you've got shared units and much more modern systems. Are you planning to do some joint septic systems, or are we going to have 76, or do you know yet?
We don't know yet. We would love to have everybody have their own, and then you're only responsible for your own. Whether we get, over here where it's a little bit tight, I mean, you can only have so many small septic systems so close before that equates to a big septic system.
Okay.
So that is in the works as we speak. We do have quite a bit of room. We have very good soils in there. So there may not be enough room for everybody to have their own, but I believe the majority are going to have their own septic system.
And no issues with the aquifer?
No, we've been hydrogeologists to put in a bunch of piezometers and has been measuring, looking at groundwater, and Dick Sweet, a number of years ago, did a kind of a flow analysis or groundwater contouring, showing where that water goes. So we're feeling pretty comfortable. The state, I'm sure, is going to put us through the ringer with the site location permit, getting into all of that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the pond?
Pond, recreational, aesthetic, trying to give another dimension of something in the open space that would be an amenity to the folks that live down there.
Is it skating or fishing, or what's
Well, we did. I would think neither of those. We talked about potentially some sort of maybe depression for skating where, you can fill that in the winter, but it's not so deep that you're worried about somebody out testing the ice.
There's going to be some kind of a safety thing around there, given 72 people and probably a
No,
few.
we were not planning on it. It would be like if you had, I don't know, Deering Oaks Park, or your,
Yeah.
The pond over in Scarborough in there behind the town hall.
Well, I'm just too used to the school board where, your people are overly concerned about everything, and trust me, it'll come up at some point, so probably would be good to have some additional detail on that when the time comes.
Well,
Other
I won't
questions?
say we haven't thought about that. We did talk, the one thing we did talk about was making sure we have a gradual grade, so that it's not a steep grade going to the pond, that it's a very gradual grade. But we'll prepare for additional questions.
Paul?
Yeah, just one other question regarding parking. I know half the units have one-car garage, half have no garage. Will there be room in all the units somewhere to park 2 cars?
All of
The
the
driveways?
driveways that we show, and I will say, I show those driveways basically just not in the position maybe that they need to be in, given the unit, so they look a little haphazard, but each one of those, I think, is 22 feet wide enough to park 2 cars.
Okay.
And then we did in a number of places add parking for guest parking, or should you have some sort of event. We also planned on one side of the road here having an extra wide shoulder, so you potentially could have some on-street parking, although you got a lot of driveways, so there's not a lot of space there, but there would be a little bit of room on
And
the
I
side of
think
the road.
you mentioned the sidewalk goes around the entire,
Sidewalk on one side, so,
on one side, right?
right.
Yeah.
It may flip-flop as we get into additional design and that sort of thing, but right now, I'm showing it down this outside all the way through, and on this, the inside on this loop.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Other, George?
I just have a question. I'd like to go back to the septic system issue. There's a subdivision over in North Yarmouth that was done a few years ago where 7 houses went on a 4-acre parcel, and all 7 are on a common septic system. And I'm just wondering, on this site, depending on what you ran into, what would be the maximum number of units you might put on one system?
I would defer to the hydrogeologist, the septic designer.
Other questions? Before I open the public hearing, I just wanted, because I know some of you have probably not been to planning board meetings, and it's useful to just explain the role of the planning board just a little bit. We're a quasi-judicial board. We're not, we advise on policy. We get like the second item for us to comment on ordinances, but we make no policy. So what our job is to take the subdivision ordinance, which has 17 standard conditions of approval, this and witness the questions we were talking about tonight, septic, water, buffering, traffic, and we have other, there are 12 others, but we make no policy. We interpret the ordinances, the subdivision ordinance in this case, and the new West Cumberland zone. We have no jurisdiction. I know a lot of you are concerned as far as impact on the schools. That does not come under our jurisdiction. That comes under, it's a policy thing. My good friend Bob Vail is over here, and years ago when he was chairman of the planning board, every once in a while he would get into these things that we ought to be doing this, that, and the other, and we always joked with Bob is that if you want to make policy, go on the town council. But and finally, after the number of years, Bob is on the council, and along with his colleague Shirley are the ones that make the policy that we govern. But we cannot. We might think this stuff, but it's not in our jurisdiction. So that being said, because I think a lot of times folks don't understand just what our role is versus the council and, heaven forbid, the school board. So anyway, from this point, I will welcome public comment. Please come to the podium and state your name and where you live, and we welcome you.
Hi, I am Lynn Kopp, and I live on Goose Pond Road. And please excuse my ignorance, but I've heard people in this meeting and other meetings talk about the aquifer. I do not quite understand what that is and how these septic systems will affect that. They say it really doesn't have much of an effect, but I have a well in the area, as does everybody else. And the thought of having 73 septic systems on top of our water does not sound good. So I'm just curious to know the distance between the aquifer and the septic systems. So that's one
Mr.
question.
Beagle, could you answer that question?
What I do know is that the flow from our groundwater contouring goes out towards the turnpike. So I believe all our flow is going the other way. I would have to defer to our hydrogeologist for his measurements of exactly where groundwater is and the difference. There is the septic requirement there is a septic requirement for the design to have a certain amount of separation. So I can tell you that that will need to be met, but I can't tell you what that is, and I can't tell you what the groundwater measurement is. We will be moving earth around and changing the level of the floor will be coming up. So I guess I can only say we'll be adhering to every requirement, and we will be submitting septic system information to the town and to the Maine DEP to make sure that there are no problems.
Is that, yeah, I seem to remember, Dave, something else, I seem to remember that there was another proposal for this area that came up years ago. Am I correct? Because I seem to remember that Dick Sweet, who's since passed away, did a hydrological study, and the fact was that the water was flowing down Morrison's Hill in direction. It wasn't flowing back into, I do remember from my Wheaties Box Top School of Hydrology that Dick had mentioned that. And I think,
That's accurate. There's actually a groundwater topo. I don't think the layer is on this, but they actually have the topo of the existing groundwater, and towards this area, it's in excess of 7-8 feet to the water table on this end, and on this end, in some areas, it's near the top of the ground, but probably within a couple feet. You get down around these areas, there's quite a bit of depth to the water table, but that's all going to be, engineered. The Dick Sweet worked with C.V. Mahar back then, and Dick Sweet had come up with the same numbers we're coming up with today, which is no big surprise to me, that the site's more than capable of handling 80 3-bedroom septic systems. And the groundwater flow is important because they measure the nitrate load that leaves the site, and that's what would impact someone's well. But there's nothing flowing towards these houses from the groundwater topos that both companies have done at this point.
okay, thank you. Is there anything else that we could,
Yes.
okay?
So my next question is, I like that there's a lot of open space, but is that available to all members of the town or just people that live in that development?
David, can you come to the microphone?
It's probably to be determined, and the reason I say that, not trying to be coy or anything, the condominium association typically pays for all the maintenance of the trails and the lawn mowing of the open space and that sort of thing. I think that's a negotiation I'm happy to enter with the town. If it was important to them, they will be public roads, so I think there's a strong merit for members of the public to be able to park in one of the overflow parking spots and walk their dog around and stuff like that. But I don't know how I honestly do not know how to handle the maintenance of the open space where the condo people are paying for it. So maybe there's some sort of an agreement that the town can contribute.
Well, that will come up, I think, if my memory serves me right, that one of the things, and maybe not with this particular site plan, but normally there's a condo association document that would outline these things, and that's one of the things that we will see before we approve this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
Sorry, I
to
have a
be
little list.
determined?
So the next thing is, I know that there hasn't been a traffic study done. But I don't know if anybody has ever gone down Upper Methodist Road. It's a little tiny dead-end road. And, you know, if every house has 2 cars, even if half of them go out Upper Methodist Road, that's a lot of traffic on that little tiny road. So it just feels like it would be a huge burden to that neighborhood.
You
And I-
will see when we come up, and actually, again, a lot of people don't realize that if you go to the agenda and click on the particular item, you see the same information that we do. So when the next thing comes in, you can go and you see the exact same documents, the traffic studies, the hydrological studies, so it's no great thing with the wizard behind the curtain, that this is a public document that you see as much of it as we do.
Okay. And then the last thing is, I just don't understand why this is a good project at this time in our town. Our town is struggling. It sounds like, you know, we're going to have this expensive school and not be able to afford it. People are moving out of town because they can't afford to stay here. Why are we not bringing in, if something needs to go in that space, why are we not encouraging more commercial stuff so that we have some, you know, more tax income from there? We're not taxing the schools. We're bringing in people that are going to spend money in our town at our small businesses. I just don't think it's a good idea for our town right now. We're exploding, and soon we're going to implode because we can't handle it anymore. Thank you.
I could
Carla?
The reason that the zoning overlay was put in place, and it wasn't recently, it was added April 14th, 2014. So it's been there a while. It hasn't been utilized, obviously, until right now. And the reason that the town council changed the zoning was because of the concern about polluting the aquifer. So it previously, and it still is, an industrial zone, which is about the worst possible land use to have over an aquifer. That is why the zoning was changed to allow residences. Dick Sweet and C.V. Mahar, the hydrogeologists, all said that the best use of that land in terms of protecting the aquifer were residential uses. So that is why the zoning was changed when it did. As to the timing with the schools, you know, like I said, this has been here since 2014. It's being used now. Those are really the things that the planning board has to look at is, well, what did the ordinance say? What does it say?
Sir?
Yeah, Clayton Kopp. I live on Main Street, but quite a vested interest over on that end of town. Question about the septics. Is there a PFAS study done on the amount of wastewater, the PFAS and wastewater going into the aquifer area, the groundwater? Because we all know that's a hot topic right now. And the EPA is right now lowering that to, 4 parts per trillion, which is pretty much a dropper in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and it's contaminated. So that's something that the planning board really needs to consider. I understand the nitrates, but they didn't discuss anything about PFAS, PFOS, going into the groundwater and potentially going into the aquifer, where their distance is roughly 2 feet in springtime. The groundwater is 2 feet above the ground. And we've got pictures, years of pictures of that. So I think that's something that needs to be considered. The amount of PFAS that are generated by wastewater in the septic systems, and what they plan on doing to mitigate that down the road, because once that bill is passed by the EPA, that is legal, and unfortunately lawsuits could probably happen after that, if that water table is contaminated, if that aquifer is contaminated by these houses. That's all I got on that.
Thank you, Mr. Kopp. Actually, it's an interesting thing that we can ask the hydrogeologists.
Hi, I'm Lorna Kopp. I live on Upper Methodist Road. I just had a couple questions. What are the side setbacks for residential? You said they're different than what would be on.
Wasn't it?
I couldn't hear.
Towards the overlay.
Yeah.
So the side setback for the whole parcel is shown on the little table on our plan, and the side setback is 10 feet. With using the condominium-style development, we have no lot lines between those buildings. It's really, again, kind of your limited common element. So there would be just a self-determined building placement. The buildings that we've shown here are a minimum of 18 feet apart. The only side setbacks that you would see would be around the outer perimeter of the parcel.
And those from Upper Methodist Road, what would that be?
So Upper Methodist Road, you would have a front setback of 25 feet. So there'd be a 25-foot setback from the right-of-way line on Upper Methodist Road. That would be considered I believe that would be considered a front on this parcel. That's what we're showing on this plan. That would have the front setback.
Okay, thank you.
But what would be the actual distance? What is the distance? Can you scale it from Upper Methodist to the homes? It looks to be farther than 25 feet. That's all I'm trying to understand.
Well, it's a little over, it's a little bit from the right-of-way. So you have the edge of pavement, and then you have the actual right-of-way. So those are set back a little bit over 25 feet. It's enough so you could pull your driveway in, and your vehicle is not in the right-of-way. It's totally in your parcel.
Okay. And you had mentioned that there will be sidewalks. Are those just planned for the development, or will you also be putting them on Methodist Road?
We have only proposed those for the development.
And with all of that traffic that we're going to add, you don't think that we need sidewalks on Upper Methodist also?
Well, I didn't say that, but I said all we're proposing is along the streets that we are constructing.
This is what she's asking. Yeah.
Okay. I guess my other questions were answered before. I still think that if we're going to consider housing there, and we're going to put that much traffic in, if we need sidewalks in the development, it only makes sense that we need sidewalks on Upper Methodist Road and Blackstrap Road. If the development needs sidewalks, then the people around the development need sidewalks also. That's going to be my biggest question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to address the board?
I'm Matt Dobson. I live at 83 Methodist Road, which is the last house at the hammerhead at the end of the road. I receive all the water that comes down Upper Methodist Road, and there's no, you're gonna add all that subdivision, and it's gonna, I know by grades and stuff, it's all gonna end up down at the end of that road. Is there some kind of plan for stormwater on that?
Yes, they have to, when we review this, that's one of our 17
Yeah.
standard conditions of approval that, that they have to have adequate plans for stormwater runoff. And I would say that sometimes the three all-stars are always traffic,
Yeah.
buffering, and
Problem
septic
is
system.
they're gonna have to fix, because I mean, every bit of that water that comes down that hill, I am the very last house, and then I have a tapered driveway down to my house. Every bit of water that runs down that road runs down into my driveway or in the catch basin. If the catch basin plugs, it ends up in my driveway. My driveway's icy during the whole winter. And then you get those houses 25 feet off the edge of the road. Every house along the other end has to meet, I think it's a 100-foot setback, right? Why can't we push those back so it looks like it's part of the same subdivision? I mean, like it's part of that same neighborhood. Putting those houses close to the road compared to everybody else's houses that are set way back, I think it would, and I would prefer no houses down there because I like being the, only one down there and not having all that traffic. But he has the right to do whatever he wants to with his land.
But
I would propose that they move the houses back like they are on the other side of the neighborhood.
But again, that's noted by, I mean, this is one of the things with the sketch plan
Yeah.
that they're getting feedback
Yeah.
tonight from everybody, and
Yeah.
a lot of the feedback, but as far as stormwater is concerned, they're required to do,
I know they're required to, but what happens if this gets developed and then next thing you know, I'm dealing with a lot of water down at the end of my driveway, coming down into my driveway and into my well and everything else.
well, I think on the basis of your testimony, I mean, this happens a lot that we have, anecdotal
Yeah.
stuff that comes to us during the presentations. So generally, our modus operandi is to go back to the.
I just want to make sure it
the
gets
del-
addressed.
The developer and say, have you got this thing covered?
Yeah.
And been my experience over the years that, in fact, we just had one down on Route 88 where we had the same problem, and a couple people came in and said, you get out there, this is what's really happening, and
Yeah.
we required, we held the thing up a month until they got that particular thing. So as this process goes, you'll see the complete stormwater plan
Yeah.
as much, and if you don't understand it, which
Oh,
probably
I've
half of
worked,
it I
I've
don't.
worked excavation all my life.
Okay,
So
you-
I know,
yeah.
but I also know how that road, and you can ask everyone that's here from that road, because the grade on that hill, we get a driving rain, it literally runs, it runs right down to my house.
Well, I think
So-
you're talking, the folks that have got,
I
that are
just
doing
don't
this
want,
thing.
I know how the grading's gonna end up on this, it's gonna be low, by the time it comes out, it's gonna be just about enough so it starts going down that hill, and then all that and all the extra stuff that comes off Methodist Road is gonna run right down into the end of that hammerhead.
Well, Dave and Peter, you've heard that, and we need to see that they're not going to have kayaking on Lower Methodist
You
Road.
can do that now. With the rain we've had lately, you can just about do that, so,
Okay, thank
thank
you.
you.
Anyone else?
Bob Vale, Cumberland Center, Town Council. I want to respond to that gentleman there, his comments there. I can think of 3 specific enforcements that the town incurred against developers, and one of them was in your backyard. And you have 2 former councilors here on the planning board who are familiar with what the process was, and I can assure you that David is not going to get away with impacting your residents, and the enforcement is painful, and you know what I'm talking about. So I think that I can assure you that your comments are heard loud and clear, not only by them, but by council members also.
Anyone else wish to comment?
Shirley Story King, Cumberland. I'm on the town council. Item D3 on the housing overlay requires 100-foot frontage for each dwelling unit. Do these lots have 100 feet frontage for each dwelling unit?
It's one lot,
They look kind of narrow.
but it's one lot. I think that's why they're getting,
It's what?
it's one lot. It's
Right.
one parcel because it's condo, because they're doing it by condo. It's one parcel.
But it doesn't say that. It says per 100-foot frontage per dwelling unit. Just pointing that out.
Well, we can, Carla, that's in your purview to determine whether it is or it isn't.
What is the frontage at this point, roughly? That's what I was thinking, about 50 feet, seems like it is. That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
Okay, is there anybody else that wishes to, yes, ma'am? Yeah,
I'm Heather Giacoma. I live on 12 Pond Shore Drive, so I live right off Skillen. And I walk my dog every day on Skillen Road. And I can tell you intimately that the litter on that road, I cannot walk my dog on other than the pavement. Because if my dog goes off the pavement, she's into things that you don't want to know about. It's awful. It's a mess on that road. And that is a function of too much traffic and population density. Now, my issue is when you do traffic studies, you study number of traffic, but do you study the ramifications of what people throw out of their cars when they're driving by and the speed at which they are doing it? Because I can tell you, again, because I am on that road all the time walking, 35 miles an hour is a guide, not the rule. And you add more traffic to that road, which was never designed to accommodate the traffic that's going to come down from these units. It's an issue for me. That's why I'm here. The second thing, and this may come up at the council meeting, it's probably not inappropriate, but you multiply 72 by, say, 4 people per house. I'm no math major. But does that require an extra police officer, more law enforcement, more fire control, more emergency management? You call 911 in this town, and I can tell you I have. And I have been so far extremely pleased with the response that I've had. But you add this amount of people and keep the same number of personnel without hiring more, that time is going to be delayed. And that could also be a very big issue. Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else?
Mark Sloat, 81 Blackstrap Road. I am the sole house at the top of the hill. I've lived there since I was 9, back when it was Cumberland Sand and Gravel, then Blue Rock, then Pike, and then Chase. I have questions. That whole pit is spring-fed. So what happens to all that water with all the weight of those houses sitting on it? Where's all that water gonna go?
David?
Well, or him,
What are you talking about?
that pit.
No, what was your question?
It's spring-fed. There's water down there under that with all the weight of them houses. Where's all that water go?
You're talking about the weight of the houses?
Yeah, like when they preload a site because there's water and it pushes all that water out so they can build later.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer. Tell
I know,
Bill-
and
I
he's
tell
not
Bill
here,
Shane I am, but just jokingly. But I can tell you that the weight of those houses are very minimal compared to the dirt piles that are existing in the pits. So, and as far as the weight of the aquifer below, you've already removed an average of 25 feet of dirt off the top of that spring. So the weight of the buildings, I would bet a lot of money that'll be not an issue at all.
Okay, that's just a question I had.
Yeah.
In this pond, now he said they would fill it. Once they dig that pond, that's gonna stay full all the time. There's no not, because the spring's gonna fill it. Back before we bought the house that I live in now, they started digging the pit behind my house. They opened up a spring, and they had to haul dirt in to fill it because it would have ended up filling the pit and it would have become a lake. So some of these springs, I don't have a problem with the pond. And my property also goes down the hill and goes into the back of where this pond is, which I don't have a problem with that either. But also coming out of the road that's there now is this little stream. I don't know where it starts from. It's been there since I was 9. It flows from the pit road into my property out and then heads on down. And where it goes, I don't know. I used to play in that when I was a kid, and we could never find out where it comes from. Could never find out where it goes. I'm guessing down and out the turnpike. Is that little stream gonna keep flowing when you're done?
I'm not impacted.
Because you're not changing the road going down at all, are you?
No.
Right.
Can you go to the microphone so the public can?
We will be rebuilding that road, but we have it in approximately the same location.
Right.
So we've got to change the grades. I'm actually not familiar with where that stream is, but we're
It
trying
comes right
to.
out of this is backwards from where I'm used to, but.
Yeah, so you're up here.
Yeah,
so
where's the road? Yeah, so
Yeah.
it comes out of here, flows, and then goes through my property, and then heads up and heads down towards the. It's constantly moving because it's spring fed.
We will be trying, we will be maintaining existing drainage patterns is one of the things with our stormwater. We'll be trying to clean up wood lines. We'll be trying to make sure that we take care of any erosive situations. We're not trying to change anything other than clean up and stabilize.
These town roads or private roads you're putting in?
They're being built to town road standards, in
So the town would be,
thinking that the town would be taking those
plowing.
over. Yes.
Okay. Now, as you know, when it rains, that pit pretty much goes under a lot of water. So, do you know how high you're billing these up to put sewers in? Because if you put sewers in right now, they're just gonna get full of water.
We're going through a grading, we're working on the grading plans right now. I will say everybody that's working on this project is pretty familiar with the pit from previous years of work.
And my last question, I think, I just had a new well drilled, because I had redid my house and I had to move it, which has to be 100 feet from my sewer, which it is. What's the chance of all those sewers on there ended up polluting my well? And who's gonna foot the bill for me to either go on town water or a new well? Or does
Well-
that become a legal battle that I have to face?
We need to make sure, we'll need to locate your well, and we'll need to make sure that all our systems are certain distance away from that and flowing
Because
away from it.
from here to here, how many feet is that?
Well, that's 100 scale drawing, so so from where to where?
From here at the corner of my property
Yeah.
to this first house?
That's hundreds of feet.
All right.
That's probably 800 feet from there to there.
So I'm actually in a better spot here than the people down here on Methodist Road, right? Because these houses are kind of closer to them than these are to me.
We're pretty sure nobody's gonna be having a problem with the way our septic systems will be.
Well, Matt was saying that these are only 25 feet off the side of the road.
These houses are 25 feet back from the right-of-way. These are all well into the bottom of that pit.
So it's just these four that?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
because I've seen all 4 of the plans. Keeps changing, which is fine. This plan I'm okay with because of the way it's set up with all the greenage. Do I want it there? No, but, and I know David, and I have nothing against David or anybody, but I just was concerned about my well that cost me $11,000, and, yeah.
Yeah, we will,
And I know you can't grade the sides much because you'll be in the turnpike over here. I don't know what you're gonna do, or you're pitching the sides of the pit at all?
yeah, we are sloping things. We're trying to make sure, like I said, that the area is stabilized, that the slopes are not so steep that we have erosion problems.
So you plan on coming over and sloping my property?
Well,
That would be a problem.
we will not be on your property.
Well, if you're gonna slope it, you'd have to be.
Well, we will not be sloping any area that's not on our property.
Because I still own and I keep dumping brush and stuff and to keep filling it to take back what my parents originally leased to the pit. So I can try to get my property eventually back to where,
We will be doing no
It
work on
was.
anybody else's property.
so I come out kind of looking good where everybody else sort of isn't, so to speak.
Everybody comes out looking good.
Depends on how you look at it.
Anything else?
Well, he already, that about, am I gonna be able to go down there if I choose to and walk around the pond and play when my property line is pretty much so many feet from that pond? And if I do go down there, the neighbor's gonna say, what are you doing down here? And then we get into a piss and match because I'm on my own property.
That we said was to be determined.
Who spoke? Oh, you.
Oh, me, yeah, just me.
Right,
No,
I know it came up, but I couldn't remember.
No, what we're gonna look into it. We don't have a definitive answer right now, but one would kind of hope that you could. But it's the fly in the ointment is that it's a condominium association, so there's a bunch of rules that happen, but we do have some say, minor-wise, over condominium things, don't we, Carla?
Well, the town attorney reviews the homeowners association documents or condo association documents just to make sure they're legal and not putting any kind of burden on the town of Cumberland.
Well, the council may want to weigh in on that too, because it's a public use of a private thing, and my junior league law degree doesn't go that far, but I think it's something we're going to look into.
Okay. I mean, when I was little, I used to run up and down that bank every day and play. I'm gonna be 66 in September. Chance of me running up and down that every day to play isn't gonna happen, but if I choose
Just
to go
walk,
down there.
don't run.
Okay, I'll run, but I just wanted to, don't want a whole bunch of snobs that are just gonna cause trouble later moving in there, that's all.
He probably developed a
Okay, anybody else? Yes? Oh, anybody else wish to comment?
Yep, one more thing that Shirley mentioned, the 100-foot setback. Is that considered two fronts, where that dumps on, has the road and the road on Methodist Road? Would that be considered two fronts, Carla?
I think it would be. Christina, you spend more time with Bill Longley on these types of questions. Do you agree it would be two fronts?
I would agree, yeah.
Yeah.
We do show a front setback on all the proposed roads, as well as on Upper Methodist Road.
Okay.
And that's 25 feet.
Yes.
The requirement is 25 feet.
I thought Shirley just said it was 100.
That's
Shirley's
in front of
referencing,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, lot frontage, which says that there shall be no less than 100 feet of lot frontage for all dwelling units in the West Cumberland Housing Overlay District, which I think is to be determined since it is maybe one parcel and what is
So is this gonna have
what
one
does
tax
front
bill?
mean for the
this-
condo association?
Is this
I
gonna have
guess?
one tax bill?
Beyond my job description at the moment.
Carla?
I don't know, I'm not a land use attorney. David, you have more condo
I mean, if it's gonna have
projects
one
than I
tax bill,
know
it's
of.
one lot. If it's not gonna have one tax bill, it's multiple lots.
It-
Well, it's not accurate.
It's not?
No, it's not, no. Each house, each individual dwelling unit will get their own tax bill. The common area, the 26.9 acres, will get a tax bill that's paid by the condo association. So each house will have its own tax bill.
So its own property tax map and everything.
I don't know. I know it'll have its own tax bill. I mean, there's no other way.
Yeah, it will have to have its own map and lot file for all the building permits,
If
electrical
it
permits.
does all that, it needs 2 frontages. It needs the 100-foot setback on both sides.
You're saying each lot requires,
That's what the code says.
yeah. This is why we do sketch plan review. We thought we had answered the questions that we saw, that, Bill Longley, we sit with Bill Shane, with the developer, and we try to anticipate how this is going to work. So these are good, the question Shirley had and the one you're raising. We'll get to the bottom of it. We
Yeah.
will.
And also, one other question for you, Carla.
Yeah.
Back in 2014, when it was industrial, they tried to put the recycling center in there, and it got voted down. And then they put the overlay in it. Why wasn't it transferred over to commercial property?
Rather than industrial, go to
Rather
commercial.
than industrial, go to commercial. And then you could put an office park in the bottom of that pit. And then you don't have the septic problems that you're gonna have with 72 units with 300 people down there.
I couldn't tell you why it was not moved to commercial, except that I know at one point, David, you had a commercial use. When you come down the hill on the left, you had 3 commercial units, and one of them had a gas tank, as I recall, fuel, because it fueled up vehicles, and that was a concern at the time because of the aquifer. So I think that everything that.
That's not an office park, though.
No, it isn't an office park, but a lot of things fall under commercial.
Right.
Just for
But
the
that-
record, you don't have to worry about me ever building an office park, because I tried it on Route 1, and there's no office market. So the 100-foot per dwelling unit doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I could go with multifamily units down there, which I'm not throwing that in anybody's face, by the way. I'm just saying apartments are an allowed use in that zone. So I'm not sure how you have a 100-foot minimum unit frontage if you can build multiplex. So, and there's no limit on the number that I'm aware of. I was looking at doing 8 or 12 unit buildings down there at one time. So, I don't know. That'll have to get ferreted out.
That's all I got.
Hey, yes.
No, go ahead.
I have 2 questions for David. Say you're approved, you can start building tomorrow. How long before you're completely done?
David, if
5
you could
years?
come to the,
5 years? I'm just curious as how long this is.
I'm anticipating, and it's all market driven, and I don't have the crystal ball, but based on today's market, even slowing down some, I think I'll be building approximately 20 to 25 units per year. So it's, once construction starts, it'll be 3 to 4 years before it's completed.
All right, and
So
while
I'm
you-
saying 5 years from today.
And while you're here, is this the final draft, or is this gonna change maybe again depending on what the state or someone else says? You know what I mean?
This is a sketch plan to get feedback from the planning board.
'Cause I saw
We have
that-
not done all the engineering. We haven't addressed Mr. McDonald's comments. The final grading and engineering may drive that sketch in a little bit different direction, but we feel pretty good because we did have one grading plan done, that this is pretty close to where we're gonna end up. This is,
Okay.
this is the fourth or fifth
Right, 'cause
rendition.
I've seen them
Yeah,
all, and I
yeah,
saw the multi
yeah.
houses you were talking
Yeah,
about, and some
yeah.
business buildings that you were gonna put
You
in.
got a nice water view now.
Yeah, I know, like I said, out of all of these, this is the better plan that you've come up with, but I was just wondering if the state says, no, you can only put 50 in, if this will change and do something different, or if they say, that's all I was getting at, because like I said, I've seen this thing change, but just getting an idea on if this is final, to an extent. I'm done.
Anybody else wish to comment? I think, David, yes.
Hi, I'm Ned Kopp, and I live on Methodist Road. And me and Mark are the two lowest houses on Methodist Road. And when you're saying the sewage is gonna run towards the turnpike, that means the sewage is gonna run at my house. And I, have an artesian well and stuff. What goes on if my well gets contaminated? Because it's a real possibility. It's all gravel there. And so there's nothing gonna stop it from spreading. And it's all coming right at me and Mark. And,
Well, I think the thing is that as part of the stormwater and wastewater treatment system, that this issue needs to be addressed, from statistics and engineering studies to make sure it doesn't happen. And that's beyond probably both of our pay grades.
yeah,
but-
I'm gonna say, yeah.
But this is part of the process, that this is the thing that they need to determine that it won't, and we need to determine that it won't.
Well, unless they raise the houses about 10 feet above the aquifer, because that's groundwater right there. The pit, they're right down on the water level. The sewerage is gonna, yeah, and I've born and raised there, and I've seen that whole pit under a lot of water. And, so I think you're gonna have some surprises.
Well, we exist to be surprised.
Yeah, but I don't want to be surprised.
Well, this is why we're going through this process, to make sure you don't.
Okay, I'll hold you to your word.
Well, that's part of our responsibility.
Yeah, because-
But the thing is that we and the developers, this is exactly the purpose of this meeting tonight, is to hear from you and hear the individual issues you have with your particular property. So when it's done, these are resolved. We had two issues, a couple last month with Route 1, with property owners that were concerned about particular things, and we made sure that the developer took care of that before we approved the thing. And it'll be the same thing with the wastewater and the buffering and everything else, to make sure that you guys are protected. I mean, that's part of our job.
It's gravel. I don't know how they could protect it.
Well, that's,
It's gonna spread,
we'll find out.
especially in the springtime when all Mother Nature starts dumping water and all that sewage is gonna, it's just gonna flush it right down towards the pike and me and Max.
Okay, well, again, we'll address that as it comes.
Hopefully not too late.
Well, I hope, we've got a way to go with
I
this.
mean, but it is the truth.
No, I think it's so noted.
I just want to make a comment about, I'm sure when I get here for preliminary. You know, people will show up with photos of that pit being flooded in the springtime, and I don't disagree that it happened in the past. But that was part of the reason I swapped the land with the turnpike. There was a berm of gravel that started up here and came right here, and I took that windrow of gravel out. So now what was happening, in my opinion, and you'll get engineers to verify it, is in the spring of the year when the frost was coming out of the ground, the water can't go down into the gravel like it does most all of the time. So all that runoff in that whole pit was puddling up, and it just couldn't go through this wall fast enough. Now that the wall has gone, there's no more ponding, and I don't see any evidence of water escaping this pit as well. But this is all 15. I'm not going to argue with Ned because he knows a lot more about Methodist Road than I do. But this is all 10 or 15 feet lower than Methodist Road. I guess I'm not understanding how the water.
I'm not concerned about the water.
The ground. So you're not concerned about the groundwater.
It's
You're
a
talking.
sewerage that's
So-
gonna get washed with the groundwater.
So I don't. The state isn't going to allow us that to happen. But you say, what if it does? This is going to be public water down here. If these.
No, we don't have water.
Okay,
Yes, I'm telling
this
you,
is
I have
a
to extend the
public
public
hearing,
water.
and
Yeah.
just keep the comments to the public, please.
And I don't think there's anybody on.
Okay,
Methodist Road that wants.
do you
public
have
water.
do you have any other concerns? I don't, just a back and forth.
Okay, well,
No, but your concerns are noted, Paul.
This question partly for Carla. Like Bridget, and related to Shirley's comment, like Bridget, I presume because there was one parcel in the condominium approach that the setbacks, I thought, pertain to this project. If in fact, it is in fact 100 feet per dwelling unit, this could change the entire sketch plan. And I'm wondering at this point if we should not table this project until we are sure what the 100-foot setback refers to. Otherwise, if we approve it or not approve it, I think we're doing it without
Right.
the facts, the information that we need.
Well, this is just sketch plan, and when these little woolly boogers come up.
But even the sketch
yeah.
plan, if in fact
Yeah.
the 100-foot applies to each dwelling, this sketch plan has to entirely change.
That's true. That is correct.
So
The
anyway, I
ta-
throw that out as a consideration
Yeah.
and then we resolve that issue, and then we look at another sketch plan.
I just like, as the applicant, I'd just like to respond to that. It is sketch plan, you're not taking a vote. I think it's very healthy to continue the meeting to make sure, if there are any other comments, I mean, you could table it. I could come back next month, 2 months from now, and there could be another, oh, wow, we didn't think of it.
I
I'd rather
agree.
get it out from the public now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I thought
yeah.
we didn't close it, but I looked like.
Okay, so
yeah, I agree
I
with
would
that.
just ask that you don't table.
No, I mean, I think, I think this discussion is exactly the purpose. Again, that this stuff is coming out of the woodwork, people concerned on setbacks, traffic, PFAS. I mean, this is all stuff that that they have to take into consideration going forward. So this is, and again, if this 100-foot setback comes up, then that's a horse of a different color. But anyway, this is,
It's frontage, not setback.
yeah. Does anybody else have anything? Well, Bob?
One more time at bat here. I've known most of these people in the room for a long time, including David. I think that there's enough things that have been raised that I encourage David to take a long, hard look at, and that is amenities that not only are put into your project, but those that affect the surrounding neighborhood. And bringing water across the turnpike it may benefit your project and make it the ability for you to move forward with it. The understanding is that water line isn't going to just stop there. The conversations are with the idea that at some point that will tie into the Falmouth line on Blackstrap. So it's public water just isn't going to stop there. It's at some point, you know, you look 10 years, 20 years, 30 years down the road, and that water line will look further a lot different. I raise the issue with sidewalks, and you know, I think that there's an opportunity here for you to take another look at your plan going forward. And I appreciate the woman's comments about walking alongside Blackstrap, and really there are no shoulders there to get away from traffic. And so I'm not proposing that David puts a sidewalk from Upper Methodist all the ways out to Route 100, but certainly I'd ask you to consider options in your plan going forward, and providing some amenities that may benefit the public in addition to your own project. And you know, we all know that there's a price point where things become unattainable and the economics don't work, but it certainly seems to me that at this point there's the opportunity to at least look at that. So I would challenge you to look at that going forward, and to take the people's concerns under notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I've kind of deviated a little bit tonight. Normally, it's a little bit more formal, but I just think it's good, and I hope the public picked up a lot of the conversations in concerns, and as I say, I think it was better just having some back and forth conversations, and rather than going through the chair and doing all that stuff. I think we've probably got a little bit more done than we might have. So anyway, at this point in time, I'm going to close the public hearing. Yes.
Oh, no.
I'm going to close the public hearing.
Peter,
and
I'd just like to make a comment before you
turn
close
it
the
back to
public
the
hearing.
board. So you
Okay.
can, yeah.
All right.
No, make a comment.
Well, since there are present counselors here and a couple of ex-counselors, I was on the council for 16 years, there's always, in this type project, there's always an undercurrent that exists in people's minds. And Carla was asked why the industrial zone wasn't changed to commercial. And I just want to point out to people that we take a snapshot in time from the late 90s to now, and various years and various groups of years, there have been very different conditions as far as what works in town and what doesn't. And Bill Shane, when he first came to be the town manager, one of the first things he wanted to do was get this town to 12% commercial, and probably, supposedly, we're around 9%. It's been quite a few years. And I was involved with some property below Morrison's Hill. And I tried to market that property and I talked to banks, I talked to various other commercial entities who came close, but never were interested in this pretty large parcel. And the council, in its wisdom, eventually ended up doing an overlay and making it affordable housing. And I think if anybody thinks it's been inadvertent that we've gone to more and more housing as opposed to commercial, it isn't. It's because various years, and particularly of late, it's just been impossible to do anything else but go with the housing. And then, of course, we run into the inevitable situation with making things tougher and tougher on the schools. So where all of this will go, I don't know, but I think this project is going to be approved eventually, regardless.
Other board members? Ann, did you have something?
Yeah, I just had a couple of things. First of all, I do appreciate all the comments, because as the plans come back to us, you know, we have that in our heads, and we'll look very carefully at the way those issues are addressed. Now, for instance, stormwater, I believe that you cannot increase the runoff when you do a development like this. I mean, I think it's either a federal or a state law that you
It's in
cannot
our-
increase the runoff.
It's in our ordinance that the post-development rate of runoff cannot exceed that was pre-development.
Yep.
And that sounds better than it actually is, because the rate of runoff is a different thing than the amount of runoff. And we've been trying to figure out how do we address that. I think Bob Vale's spoken to that in the past. But nevertheless, there are mechanisms through detention basins to control how quickly the water is leaving the site. That's a town ordinance. And
Right. And the sewage can't impact their wells. We
Yep.
have to take consideration of that.
One of the things I wanted to reassure the public, because I didn't know this before I became a planner, is that when a project's developed, you think it's maybe the developer and the developer's engineers that do all the work, and then they tell the planning board, oh, it's all set. And that's not the case. The way it works is Dave hires a team to put together all the information. They submit it to me. I send it out to another engineer who's paid by David, but working for the town of Cumberland. And they do a very thorough review of all these standards. And it's because of that that it can take 3, 4, 5 meetings, if not more, to work out all those issues, because what you have is the developer's engineer talking to the town engineer and trying to get an agreement that the project, as it's finally going to be approved, is safe and meets the terms of the ordinance.
And that information, as Peter pointed out, will all be public information. I mean, we get pages and pages of stuff that talks about the water and the tables and impacts and so on. So, you know, you're certainly more than welcome to look at that. And if you don't like it, then, you know, point it out to us. If you think it's wrong, then point that out to us. Okay, so but I did have one other question. This is a gravel pit. Now, is this a gravel pit that's been closed in accordance with all the rules regarding the closure of gravel pits? Because I understand that that's quite a complicated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's I'd consider it an active gravel pit, but there's no mining of materials from the site. The materials are trucked in, processed, and then trucked back out. So it has not been closed down. It's an open gravel pit.
Well, won't it have to be closed down?
As
Won't it-
part of this plan,
It will be, so
yeah,
we just haven't-
This gets, that's the end of it, once this gets you know, if this plan goes through. Now, does it have to? Not as, I mean, we could just continue to process material,
Okay.
do the same thing. So I'm not thinking it has to be closed down, but
So I think, Anna, you're thinking does the state require certain things to happen?
Yes.
In the closing down of a gravel pit, and that's why I look to you or Peter. I don't know the answer.
well, it has to be closed out at some point when it's closed, but as long as you're continuing to operate out of there, it doesn't.
So that's a question we'll get you an answer for about that.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Oh.
Paul?
I just had one thing. So I wanted to thank you all for coming as well, because, you know, what you say to us sticks with us as we go forward and looking at what's submitted in future meetings. This question is for Carla and Christine. The abutters, every time this project comes up, will they get another notice that it's on the agenda so that they can continue to stay abreast of what's going on?
Every single time, you'll get an abutter notice if you're within, is it 500 feet? 500 feet of the perimeter boundary of the project. And I just want to remind the board that the ordinance didn't used to require sketch plans to have a public hearing or for butters to be notified. This is something that was changed, gee, I don't even know how many years ago, 10 maybe?
Less than that.
Less than that, so.
Since I've been here.
Yeah, so we are constantly trying to be more inclusive of neighbors, and that's why we're notified about tonight's meeting, and as the board said, very appreciative of your comments.
So from here, although I will to follow up with George on the commercial, I'm probably going to be in an urn in Moss Side Cemetery, but I sincerely believe that within 10 to 15 years that Route 100 in West Cumberland is going to have a thriving commercial thing. I think it's just its demographics and such, and I think it will happen, but I may not see it through fruition. So anyway, things are closed. David, you've got kind of feedback on what the public has, and we'll await your next submission. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody, for participating. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, which is a public hearing. And it's a recommendation to the town council on proposed amendment to the Cumberland Code of Ordinances, Chapter 315, Section 4, Word Usage and Definitions, and Section 6, Rural Residential Districts, to define and add agro-tourism as an allowed use. Carla?
Yes, as a memo that I wrote to you explained, the Grange Hall Pub is a project on lower Route 9 that is unique in that it's preserving a lot of land for conservation, and there will be a small restaurant on the site as well. The developer had asked last month if he could have 4 structures, small structures that people could overnight camp in. And he withdrew that request from the planning board, although they had received information in the packet. The Lands and Conservation Commission denied the request for that. What's before you tonight, though, is a similar concept, only instead of there being buildings or structures, they're going to be tent sites. So 4 tent sites would be the limit, and for us to allow that type of use, we have to add a use that covers that. And so the term is agritourism as we've defined it.
I know we have, so the agritourism, that whole paragraph is brand new, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So I guess my question, I know the council will deal with it, maybe Shirley, you're here, you can comment on it, but I guess the thing is that I think it's a good, I mean, it falls into the thing with the comprehensive plan where we want to encourage our farmers and agricultural things, but who controls who does what? I mean, I can just see somebody over on Range Road wants to do X, and all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you have a howling mob, maybe not on us, but the council. So are there any unintended consequences to this thing? And Shirley, you're the ordinance queen.
The same thing.
Should she go to the podium?
Ordinance committee before it came to you.
Can you go to the
You should open the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
But I have a comment too, so you can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I went out of order, but hey, we're among friends now. Yeah, I'll open the public hearing. Thank you, Bridget.
So I asked Carla the same thing when she brought the use definition to the ordinance committee for consideration. My concern would be people who decide they want to camp out for the duration of the summer or something along that line, and that we end up with tent cities like you would in the Schwanagonks for rock climbing or something. And she said it would be limited to like for each, would each
Two per.
agricultural use get a separate permit for putting up tents?
So it's interesting.
Because they have to have bathrooms.
It's only when it becomes a commercial operation, the letting of land for a tent, that the town regulates it.
Yeah.
They'd go through site plan review, just as this project, the pub is going through site plan review. So if I'm a farmer on Range Road and I just want to let people come and camp, there's nothing that the town could prevent that right now from happening. It's my land and I can let people come camp on it. It's only when I start charging them to come do that, that now the town, it's a commercial use, it needs to go through site plan review. And this limitation of the 4, I think came out of the ordinance committee meeting, as I recall. It's let's put some limit on it, and this is how we're doing
Yeah,
it.
so the sites are limited to 2 people per site, because one of my concerns was, okay, he's gonna set up yurts and put all his migrant farm workers in it. And that's not gonna go, so. The sites are limited to 2 people per site, and they have to meet subsurface water sanitation requirements.
Shirley, can you stay there? Bridget, you had a question?
I guess that was one of my main concerns as someone who has more than 2 people in my family. Like, I'd be restricted from camping.
But you're not charging your family.
No. To go to this site, to tent camp.
There's 4 tents, you could get.
But
two
there,
tents.
I mean, if I remember the site plan, I guess it would depend on what the site plan is. I'd have to rent 2 separate plans with a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old to go to my local campsite. So I was concerned that this was too restrictive, and I wanted to know what the background was, I guess, for determining the restriction to just 2 people. Because for me, it's very exclusive and prohibits families. And I know that Cumberland is a very family-oriented town, and I would feel excluded from enjoying my own lands, which I don't think was the intention.
Right. So I'm sorry, I thought you were asking about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead,
The town isn't allowing campgrounds. That's a whole definition that the state has for a campground, and it has very stringent rules about bathroom facilities and water and those types of things. Because of those state rules, that was why we limited it to the 4 only, and for not more than 2 people, because anything more than that would trigger another level of plumbing code.
So 4 people per site triggers more work, or 6 people per site?
It's 2 persons per
tent.
per tent.
But this
with 4
says,
tents.
it says 4
Per
tent
tent site.
sites.
4 tent sites.
4 tent sites, 2 people in each tent.
The understanding that I got when we were chatting about it is that these are sort of like, almost like hostile situations. People passing through maybe on their bicycle, they want to stop at the farm, have dinner, spend the night, move on.
That's right. It's really just another potential revenue source for, as I said, this is a unique project. And they've hired a husband and wife who are the farmers for the site. They're going to live on the site. But these tent sites, any income from that, I think, is designed to go back to support the farmers doing what they do.
Paul, you had a question.
So Shirley, were you on the ordinance committee that wrote
I am.
this?
She is the.
Okay. So was there unanimity or agreement on the ordinance committee?
Any what?
Was there agreement among you on the ordinance committee that this was appropriate?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because to me, it does
And,
seem,
and it's not just for this site. We're adding it for any property that's making their income through agriculture. So if Jeff wanted to pitch tents on Springbrook Farm, put up four sites, he could do the same thing and rent
well, I
them
think
out.
it's appropriate early on to be limiting to 4 and 2 each seems,
Yeah.
if later we find that it could be expanded, fine. But I think to start, I think this is
Right.
fine. You have to tent somewhere else.
Well, then you get into the definition of what is
Either.
a person. Is it an over 18
Okay.
person or is
Right,
it a
right.
tiny human? I think, it's for all RR1 and RR2, so anybody in those zones could sell 4 sites, I guess, but that would go into the unintended consequences of doing this.
Well, they'd have to be
Which was why-
agricultural.
Just a second, okay, go ahead.
It's just, yeah.
Go ahead, Bridget.
Okay, sorry, so I didn't understand that correctly, but, okay. No, go ahead.
Okay, George, and then,
I just had an opposite concern as far as availability of, there are so many uses here, which are all appropriate as far as I'm concerned. I think it's great, but not necessarily limited to the following activities. Not necessarily could open Pandora's box as far as I can see. And Shirley, I tend to
yeah,
think
I
I'm a
know.
wordsmith like you, but it just occurred to me that I can't imagine any other agritourism type use that would come up. But I'm just kind of curious why limit it, why say not necessarily limited to these activities? Why not just limit it to those activities? They're certainly ample.
When we met prior to this meeting, George, I couldn't remember which overlay or zoning district had that exact language, and then I remembered just now, it's the Fairground Overlay District, and it says, all uses commonly and historically associated with the Cumberland Fairgrounds, other than the annual Cumberland County Fair, shall be allowed to continue with the fairgrounds as permitted uses. And then it goes on to say, permitted uses shall include, but not be limited to, the following, and it just has
Well, that's-
21 uses for
Yeah,
the
well, that's fine,
fairgrounds.
but
Yep.
I just think it's arguably a potential can of worms. If somebody comes up with something that the town would prefer not to see, and it's similar enough to the other enumerated uses, you're stuck for no good reason.
and Shirley, are there, these other listed items, is there a town procedure for regulating these things or not? Like a maple syrup sundae or something like that? Do you guys have a?
No, this definition isn't, it's just a general, I was just trying to think of the farm-based specialty group, the farm-based specialty ordinance, and I'm trying to look at my phone here, and trying to figure this out. Do you have that in front of you?
The farm-based.
Could we put this in their contract zone?
Because that allows for agricultural properties to use their
But could we put this?
assets to help them raise income.
Council could, I guess.
Well, we have farm-based special events. That's the
Is what?
weddings. Is that what you were talking about? The farm-based
Yeah.
special events? All right, let me flip to that. 1549.
Well, I think this is an example for the public that they do have us reviewing these ordinances, and it isn't something that, we just casually, that there is some thought on our part
Yeah.
in these things.
Well, I'm not sure that this would be intended to stop, like, if they wanted to volunteer their property for a bike race, like a cross Main bike race, like people did on, back in the early days of the Trek Across Maine, people camped out along the way. I don't think this would stop them because they're not charging, they wouldn't be charging for something like that. These 10 sites are a way for them to just earn a little extra income above the table, not under the table.
So what do we want to do on this? It's approaching the 9 o'clock hour. What do we want to do? Approve as written, approve as amended, and what amended, or?
Peter, I'm willing to go as written. It's not a hill to die on for me. I just wanted to point it out, that's all.
I agree
And
with George.
I'll take that into consideration before we move it forward to the council.
So I am looking.
One question, though, I mean,
When we bring it back to the council, I'll mention that concern.
yeah, and I mean, could a resolution be that they could add this language just to the contract zone that applies to that property? Or not?
We can't change the
Can't change that.
contract zone,
Yeah,
not on this one. It's,
that, the contract zone has to go all the way back to the beginning. And I'm sorry, I'm guilty on that one too, because
So I'm looking for a formal motion.
I'll move that we recommend to the town council acceptance of the proposed amendment to the Cumberland Code of Ordinance, Chapter 315, Section 4, word usage and definitions, and Section 6, rural residential districts, to define and add agritourism as an allowed use.
I'll hear a second.
Second.
Seconded. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you,
And
Shirley.
when we bring it back, before we bring it back, I will take a look at it and cross-reference it with farm-based specialty events.
I specifically do remember asking the town attorney if that language is appropriate, and I think they prefer, legally, they prefer to have it not be so tight, because someone could then sue and say, well, this is very similar to that, why can't you allow it? So if we say, and other similar things, it gives some opportunity. It still allows Bill Longley, the code officer, to say, no, that is not what was meant here, and then they can appeal that decision to the Board of Appeals.
Okay, we have one minor.
Thank you all.
Shirley.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. We have one minor administrative matter. Both Lorraine and I are going to be absent in July. And I'm just, Carla, do we have anything that you would deem that's going to be life and death that should require all of us, or do you know yet?
Well, we haven't reached the deadline. That will be a week from tonight. We have a deadline for the next planning board meeting. That being said, I'm always monitoring where projects are, and I don't think there's anything that's going to be coming in next month. I could be wrong, but I can't think of anything. Can you? And if it is something that's just an ordinance or recommendation of the council, that can usually
Carry
be put
over.
off, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So I will do my best to
Okay.
ensure that we don't.
Accommodate our
But I mean,
absence.
if it's a life and death thing. But if it's a
What, are
life
you gonna
and,
stay here?
no, if it's a life, no, if life and death thing, I will exercise chair's prerogative and we'll back it back a week.
So your concern is that if the chair and vice chair are both gone for the same meeting, sort
Well,
of
and
that we
also
wouldn't
if
have
it's
anybody.
something
to-
very, if something is very important, all of us should be deliberating on it.
I see.
So if
Okay.
there isn't anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.